Hare Krishna. So today is we are discussing chapter 1.
Just one second, can you mute it? Did you share it in the Philosophy Authentic forum?
No.
So yeah, I think that is a good place for.
So we are going to talk about the yoga of sound today. Let's read the verses first. So let me stop share here and go to the verses. And kindly all of you mute yourself. Okay, so this is starting from text 12. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. On the other side, both Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. 15. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya, Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pondra. King Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Shahadev blew the Sughosha and Manipushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kasi, the great fighter Sikhandi, Drishtadumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious. Vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot, bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra, drawn in a military array, Arjuna then spoke to Krishna these words. So as you can see, this whole section is talking about conch shells, and it describes in great detail which person blew what kind of conch shell. And it's very interesting that first of all, so much time is spent on naming the conch shells, and it just describes, it kind of gives us a glimpse of this Vedic culture where even the conch shells were named. And the other reason the conch shells are named is because these conch shells are transcendental. These conch shells are transcendental, and they will have an impact on the hearts of the Kauravas, whereas the Kauravas didn't have any significant conch shells, so none of their conch shells are actually named. And we can see how the first thing that is described about the conch shell of Krishna and Arjuna, it says, Tata Sveter Hayer Yukto Mahati Shandane Stito Madhava Pandavas Shaiva Divya Shankho Pradadmatu. So Divya Shankha, which means they're both their Sankhas, and also with the Pandavas, all their Shankas or conch shells were transcendental. And as a result, they increased the enthusiasm of the Pandavas, and the Pandavas became very confident about their victory, because hearing the sound of especially Krishna's conch shell, they became very, very encouraged. And whereas the Kauravas, hearing the same sound, they became very discouraged, because their hearts were filled with envy, and they could not tolerate this transcendental sound of Krishna's conch shell.
In fact, it is described that the Duryodhans, the hearts of the Kauravas were shattered, right, by that same sound. So we'll start now. So this section, we're going to talk about the yoga of sound, and I think as we talked about this yesterday, what is your vibration? So let's move ahead. So this is actually a section from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 26th verse, 26th chapter, 32nd verse, where Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he says that it is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. So it all starts with sound, and that is actually described in all the ancient Vedic texts, that our existence has actually begun with sound, and that sounds like a very esoteric point. And I can attest to that. For the longest time, I would wonder about this. In fact, that was one of the first questions I asked my, our spiritual teacher. That what does it mean? So not such an easy point to understand, but a great sutra. So what we want to do is we want to connect this to the findings in scientific, the world of science, and see if there is any correlation between what is stated here in the Vedanta Sutra, that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession.
So this is a video from this great scientist at City University of New York. And he's a string theory scientist. So let's hear from him.
He's one of the co-founders
of string theory.
Yeah. Michio Kaku.
I work in something called string theory. That's what I do for a living. In fact, that's my day job. I'm the co-founder of string field theory, one of the main branches of string theory. The latest version of string theory is called M theory. M for membrane. So we now realize that strings can coexist with membranes. So the subatomic particles we see in nature, the quarks, the electrons, are nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string. What is physics? Physics is nothing but the laws of harmony that you can write on vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting
What happened?
vibrating strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. And then what is the mind of God that Albert Einstein eloquently wrote about for the last 30 years of his life? We now, for the first time in history, have a candidate for the mind of God. It is cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. That's what I do for a living.
So we can see here how...
In fact, that's my day job.
Okay.
So we can see here that, this whole idea of this whole... Can we go back?
Okay.
It says that how this universe... Oh gosh, he doesn't... This universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. And as we've been doing so much research, it's just so fascinating to see how when we go down to the most basic building blocks of matter, then what you see is vibration, right? And that vibration means sound. And this is kind of what he's saying, that, this whole universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. And interestingly, a very similar point is mentioned in the Krishna book, which is again another great book that we have that Prabhupada wrote. And one of the lines that I just love, this line, it says, actually, the whole world is filled with Krishna's singing. So when you first read this, you think, yeah, it's a very beautiful poetic way of saying it, but there's so much of science,
And we'll see how at some point when we study how the universe is created according to the Vedic understanding, you'll see how this song, the flute song from Krishna, actually fills the heart of Brahma in the beginning of creation, and that gives him the intelligence to actually do the creation at that point. So this is something very fascinating. When we read the Bhagavatam, it describes in Sankhya Yoga how everything is created. So the first element or the great element that appears is sound. And from sound appears the sense of hearing. From sound appears the organ for hearing, which is the ears in all different species of life. And the creation always happens from subtle to gross. It is very interesting. It always happens. So sound is the subtlest of all the elements. And from sound is created the next element, which is air. So air has the quality of sound plus one more quality, which is the quality of touch. And from air is created the sense of touch, and the skin, which is the organ for touch. And then from air comes fire. So from fire we can see and we can experience the heat, and the main thing is that fire has is form. So fire means light, and so from air light is created. So fire has the qualities of both air and sound, but it has this extra quality of form. So and so from fire comes the organ of seeing, which is the eyes, and the sense of seeing. And from fire then comes the next element, which is water, which is very interesting. And water has the qualities of sound, air, and fire, plus it has one extra quality, which is of taste. And from water comes the next element, which is earth, and earth or solid, and it has all the qualities of the previous four elements, plus it has one extra quality, which is of smell. And from that is created the organ for smell, nose, and the sense of smelling. So you can see how all the four elements like air, fire, water, and earth, they all contain the quality of sound, and the sound is prevalent in all these four elements.
I was just thinking also that the entire philosophy of Ayurveda is actually based on this Sankhya principle. And this is what we are dealing with, the 5 elements, and then how, in fact, one of my Ayurvedic teacher, he always talks about how his father actually knew how to actually treat diseases just using sound. And so he kept begging his father that, please teach me. And his father said, in order for you to learn this science, you have to, there are 2 criteria. He said the one criteria is you can never get on a plane, and the second is you can never use a cell phone. And he said there was no way I could not do those things. And so he actually never learned that great science. But the point being that Ayurvedic understanding is actually very integrally connected to this understanding that you just described, the Sankhya understanding. And this is actually something that is mind-blowing. It just really blew my mind. We just want to share this with you. This is, it's interesting because we always talk about sound in our Bhakti tradition, and sound is such an integral part of our practices, right? And it always says that sound actually is connected very strongly to form.
The form.
And I used to always think, oh yeah, so from sound is a seed, and from that seed you can have an experience of the form, or see, like we say that you actually see through your ears. That's something that we talk about so much. And so in this video you'll actually see, it's a field called CYMATICS, and they actually have a instrument even where you can actually see the form of sound. So in this video, there is no computer graphic images. This is all sound creating images on fire, on water, on sand. So we'll watch a little part of it.
The film you are about to see has new characters.
What happened? What's going on?
I didn't touch anything. Sorry.
sound and the effect of sound on fire now. So this video goes on, but we just wanted to share this just to show that how material sound is very strongly and deeply connected with form, and it in fact affects form. So
yeah, I mean, you can do further research on this technology. A cymoscope and cymatics is a growing field, and how the sound basically affects form. And when sound we'll look at how sound originates within us, and then discuss a little bit more about how sound affects form.
And not just that sound affects forms, but actually sound also heals. And this was like, again, another mind-blowing research, that we just found out. Is like, wow, this is amazing that there is a person by the name of Anton Stuckey, and he's born in near Berlin. And you want to talk about
Go ahead.
Yeah. So he actually uses Mozart to clean up a sewage plant, and he finds that when he plays this beautiful, I think there is a name for it, the magic flute, that composition, then somehow it stimulates the growth of microbes in that sewage line, right? And somehow they tend to eat up the garbage. I don't know the mechanics of it, and then that way, go ahead.
Yeah, the microbes, they get really stimulated. He says, we think the secret is in the vibration of the music, which penetrate everything, including the water, the sewage, and the cells. It creates a certain resonance that stimulates the microbes and helps them to work better. We are still in the test phase, but already noticed that the sewage breakdown is more efficient, and they are saving thousands of dollars every month because they can do it faster. And not only that, Mozart's music, as you may have seen, that is increased the intelligence of unborn babies. People use that, boosting the milk yield of the cows in many places. And in China, they did an experiment. They sang basically Buddhist mantras to their crops, and they put big loudspeakers, and then they found that the yield of the crops actually increased quite many times. So the sound actually heals. It helps people, even plants grow. And we were listening that how the trees they find water through sound.
That was amazing. Also, that they did an experiment where they saw that the water body is like far away, but just by some like vibrations they're able to understand, and that way they're able to follow their roots towards that water, because they can't grow their roots in all the directions. They have to be very selective. So using the sound of the water, they go around and find the water. And in fact, there are even more studies like that, which shows that, especially in the world of Ayurveda, this is actually quite understood, that there are certain kinds of sounds that heal and certain kinds of sounds that actually can create disease. And so it's interesting, we use the word sound health. When someone is healthy, we say, he or she is in sound health. And so, this idea of sound is so deeply connected to our physical and our mental well-being. Like this Japanese scientist, he did an experiment on sound molecule, on water molecules, right? Very similar, right? Yeah, and he found that when you speak like pleasing words to the water, then the molecular structure of the water becomes very symmetric. And when you say harsh words to water, then it's like there's no symmetry. It's like very ugly form. The water takes very ugly form. So that's sound healing. And then this is actually where it really all comes together, which is the ancient Vedas. They talk about that sound doesn't just create form, it doesn't just heal, but actually sound liberates. And so there is a very famous aphorism in Vedanta, and it says anavriti shabdat, and what that means is liberation by sound. So again, this is Prabhupada's quotation, and we can read this: by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavriti Shabdat means liberation by sound. This entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna. This is from Bhagavatam 3:26-32 again.
So how this happens, how the sound liberates a living being is we can understand that a little bit more when we understand the anatomy of sound. So the sound first originates as spiritual sound in the Muladhara chakra, or the root chakra of a living being.
So for those that don't know, there are considered to be 7 chakras or 7 energy centers in the body. Yeah.
And they are Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura.
You can say the English ones.
Okay. Root chakra, sacral chakra, or the navel chakra, Manipura chakras, then heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye chakra, and the crown chakra. So the sound first appears as spiritual sound in the Muladhara or root chakra, and this is something that we are not aware of because we are covered by this body and mind. But then and this sound, with the effect of carried by the Vayu, the prana, it moves on to Manipura chakra, or the navel chakra. There it appears as an idea, in practical terms an idea, an image, and here it's called Pashyanti Vak, which means that you can visualize. It's visualization without any connection to language. So for example, in our day-to-day life we see mango as separate from the word mango, and in different languages mango is called differently, like or AMRA in Sanskrit. So in different languages, so the representation of the object varies from language to language, but is different from the object itself. But in this stage of sound, there is no difference between the object and its representation, and that it's called Pashyanti Vak.
It's also like a vision, right? You
Yeah.
can see, you know, and then it moves on further. So Vayu means air. So there are certain airs in the body. So that air actually moves that sound to the next level, which is the, which is called the Madhyama Vak, which is at the level of the heart. And that's also known as the mental sound. And at this level, it is the level of, like being able to create something, right? And, thinking, right? And
Yeah, this is the sound of thinking. And here, the first time, the sound and its object, they separate. So now one can experience the difference between the sound and one can experience the difference between the sound and the object.
I was also just thinking, before we get into the gross sound, that we actually have an experience of that, right? That when we, we'll talk more about that, that the mind is always speaking, right? That the thoughts and the emotions, those are a form of sound. So in the modern context, we only associate sound with the topmost, which is the Vaikari Vak, which is the gross sound, which is uttered by the mouth. But we are not really aware that sound can also exist at a subtle level, and that before anything comes out of our mouth, it actually is already there in our mind and at the level of the intelligence. And so the Vedic text actually address all these different levels of sound.
And then the Pashyanti Vak is more like a desire. The sound of is called Ichha Shakti, which means the sound of desire. So that's at the very subtle level, and then it progresses to more concrete level, at the mind level, where we start thinking, forming ideas, concrete ideas, plans, thinking about plans, how to execute it. Intelligence gets involved. So that's all Madhyama Vak, all the chatter in the mind. And then it comes out as Vaikari Vak, which is the action where actually starts happening, and the body becomes involved and gets things done.
Actually, that's the reason why anything that we see actually has its origin in some idea, right? So that's why they say that everything starts with sound, because it manifests first as an idea, as a blueprint, and then it manifests in a physical form, right?
So in that sense, any idea, desire, thoughts, they are all sounds actually. They are all different forms of the sounds.
Also, I was thinking that, anyways, we'll talk about that later. Let's come back to it, yeah.
So and this hierarchy of sounds is also connected very intimately with our consciousness. So as you can see here, the soul is, and we'll talk more about this in the second chapter, but the soul is covered by a subtle body, which is like mind and intelligence, and further covered by a gross body consisting of our body. And the soul has its original consciousness, which is then projected onto the subtle body and gross body.
It's described that actually our consciousness, we exist in different states of consciousness. And so, for example, when, we all have an experience of that. We are either awake, right? And we can see things and touch things. So we are awake, like right now we are awake. So that is one state of existence. The second state of existence is when we are sleeping, but then our minds are active. So we are dreaming, and we are, at some level we are still aware. So that is the second level of consciousness. And then there's a third level of consciousness where you have such a deep sleep, which we love, right? We really fall fast asleep, and then we wake up and we say, oh my goodness, I just had such a wonderful sleep, and I wasn't even aware of anything. So that's the third kind of third level of consciousness, that's called Shushupti, which means that it's just very, very deep sleep. And so the Vedas actually talk about a fourth stage of consciousness, which is beyond.
Right. And going back to our previous diagram, if you can look at the Paravak, Pashyanti Vak, and Madhyama Vak, so we can see that here in this diagram it corresponds to the awake consciousness is Vaikari Vak, and the Swapna or dream consciousness is the Madhyama Vak, the consciousness of the up to the mind level, and even going even more subtle is the Pashyanti Vak, which is the Sushupti or deep sleep, when the consciousness of the soul is just projected to itself and not projected to the gross or the subtle body. So, but the original consciousness of the soul is spiritual. So the soul is like the flashlight. You can think of the soul as a flashlight, and it's projecting the light in that direction, the subtle body and gross body. But in order to reverse this process, the soul has to project its consciousness on the spiritual realm, which is the Turiya level. So this is where this yoga of sound comes in, and then we'll explain how, just like we
just wanted to make one more point there, that just to make a brief point here, that all these three levels, the waking state, the deep sleep state, and the dreaming state, all three are dreaming. Because all three of them are material. So even though we may feel like we are walking around wide awake, but actually the Vedas describe that even that state is a form of a dreaming
for the soul.
And so all the sound that is associated in these three realms, they're all material.
And this whole process of liberation through sound, Anavriti Shabdat, means reversing this sound. So originally it was all the spiritual sound and went on to the gross sound. So we have to now reverse that. So this is what this mantra chanting, Hare Krishna mantra, it does. It reverses us from the gross sound to mental sound, which means that right now we may be chanting just at the mouth level and our mind is somewhere else, right? So, and slowly when we continue that, then the mind also gets involved, and the mind says, yeah, this is great, I'm really liking it. And then when that gets involved, then it goes to the next level where our desire actually evolves, and then we really desire to involve in this chanting. And when that further matures further, then we are actually, the soul gets involved in this chanting.
That's when the chanting, the sound, because there are amazing things that the bhakti teachers talk about, that when they chant, they have a direct experience of the entire spiritual dimension. And Lord Chaitanya in fact says that everything, the entire spiritual dimension, is contained within this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then, as practitioners, we may think, how is that even possible? What does that even mean? And so this is what it means, that as we progress from this level of just chanting at a physical level, which means we are simply uttering the mantra. And I think somebody had asked that question, that right now there's no taste and there's no connection. But as we chant, then this mental chatter, this mental sound will start to change. And as the mental sound starts to change, then it will start entering into the heart region. And the heart region is where you will experience a desire, right? And then it will start purifying us at the desire level. And then finally that sound that we utter will no longer be a material sound. It will actually be emanating from the spiritual dimension.
And in that stage, basically the consciousness will then now start, the flashlight of our consciousness will start pointing in the opposite direction, which is the Turiya consciousness.
I know this is a lot to take in, but we'll continue to talk about it, and in the end we'll take questions. Right. So as we are speaking, if you have questions, then please write them down and then we'll address them. And this is again another really nice quotation by Prabhupada, and he talks about this television in the heart. And he says, just like thousands and thousands of miles away, you can transfer the television picture or your radio sound. Similarly, if you can prepare yourself, then you can see always Govinda. It is not that you have to purchase one machine or television set. It is there, and God is also there. You can see, you can hear, you can talk, provided you've got the machine. You repair it, that's all. And this repairing process is this chanting of Hare Krishna. So again, you know, this is the same principle being talked about, that this heart has the capacity to see. And many times people come into spiritual gatherings, and you may even have friends and family members who may say, I will believe it if I can see it. And the Vedas, they say, no, no, no. You don't see, because right now our eyes are very limited in their capacity to see. So the Vedas say, if you want to see, you must see through the ears.
Because the ears can access the spiritual realm, right? Sitting here, we can access the spiritual realm right from here, but the eyes cannot access that.
In fact, we were just reading, there was another article that we read about how when we chant, then that sound actually converts into this light, right? And that can actually go.
Yeah, when we speak, then the air comes out and the air molecules collide with each other. So the air itself may be moving at the speed of sound, which is few hundred miles an hour. But when the molecules collide, then they produce an infrared. Scientists have found out that infrared actually travels at the speed of light, and it goes on for infinity. So the vibration that we make, especially the spiritual vibration, it actually goes into the universe for infinity. And that's a very fascinating fact.
What is essential to the heart is invisible to the eye. Yeah, very beautiful, Florencia. Thank you. And we'll address some of your questions as we go along.
Right.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So this is again a little video of a whale, which makes a journey all the way
from Hawaii to Alaska.
From Alaska to Hawaii.
No, in the summer they come to Alaska,
right,
and then they go back.
Right,
yeah.
and they go back. A little bit further.
These humpbacks spent their summer months feeding in the waters of Alaska. They've traveled 3,000 miles to get here. Almost 100 miles a day. Without food. Humpbacks converge for their Hawaiian luau. Their only beacon. A song.
So again, just wanted to share this because we wanted to talk about this journey of this whale, which is such a long journey. And we were watching another video where it talked about how it's dark.
Yeah, there's no light in the ocean,
no
especially
light.
go deeper.
And also there are lots of predators that they have to face. It's a very difficult journey, and like they're saying that no food, right? And so what does it do? It just it uses its sound, and it's called echolocation, I think, where it uses that to navigate such a long journey all the way from Alaska to Hawaii, or Hawaii to Alaska, however you want to see it, whichever. Yeah. So the point being that it's the same thing for us, that we are also in this vast, the Vedas describe our existence, this whole world, as a big ocean. And it is described that this ocean is quite, we have been sometimes, right? We are in the middle of an ocean, and it can be quite fearsome. And there are big waves, and sometimes the situations can be very scary. And so the Vedas actually encourage us to find a song, to find and, encourages us to take shelter of the spiritual sound. And in that way, navigate our life through this ocean of material existence. And it is described, I just wanted to add one more thing, it's described in the Vedas that the amount of tears that a living entity sheds in its entire journey in this material world is actually enough to fill a big ocean. But then it also says that, but for one who takes shelter of the spiritual vibration, that entire big ocean becomes water that is contained in the hoof print of a calf.
So through the yoga of sound, we can turn this big ocean, shrink this up into our palmful. And this is the song that the Vedas recommend that can take us home. This chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Actually, it is a love call, and this mantra is very special because it has both the feminine and the divine supreme in this mood of conjugal mellow, Hare Krishna. So this is the song that is recommended.
So this is again, this transcendental sound vibration will immediately carry you to the transcendental platform, especially if you try to hear so that your mind is absorbed in the sound, right? So we talked about that Madhyama Vak. This Hare Krishna sound vibration is non-different from Krishna because Krishna is absolute. Since God is absolute, there is no difference between God's name and God himself. Therefore, as soon as you vibrate Hare Krishna, you immediately associate with the Supreme Lord and his energy. So this was a lecture given at Northeastern University. So we want to stop here and hear from you guys, your reflections. But just to, I think there was a question that I think I saw is why the Hare Krishna mantra, and we'll talk more about that. So we'll just continue to read. Television in the Heart quote by Srila Prabhupada is beautiful. Sometimes we feel that sound and picture when you deeply feel that transcendence during chanting or kirtan. Yeah. So any reflections or questions? I guess there are some that we can start with.
Yeah, the Hare Krishna mantra comes from the spiritual realm, and it has no relationship to this material realm, and it emanates from there, and then it goes into all the universes, so that living entities in these universes, they can take benefit from this.
Yeah, it is described that the sound actually starts or originates in the spiritual sky. And there are many other mantras that are given, and they are all very effective. However, this mantra, as we talk about, is very personal. And so when you have a personal, because we are talking about bhakti, and that relates to the heart, so the more personal it is, the more the heart becomes involved. And as we talked about, the heart is where all the desires reside.
Yeah.
So you purify the heart, you purify the mind, and automatically the senses are purified. So the whole process of bhakti is actually reaching to the core. Just like in Ayurveda, we want to get to the root of everything. So according to the bhakti understanding, the root of everything is the heart, and that's where everything comes from. So, and we definitely like to take a look at that sonic warfare. Yes, any reflections? Reflection is something that you heard or saw that you would like to share back with the group. And of course, I have found that at night my mental chatter comes in the form of the mantra. What does that mean? Mental chatter comes in the form of the mantra. Is that negative as an old, or is it a healthier filling of the mind? Or when you go to sleep, the mantra keeps running in the mind. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. That's very good. That means that there is a soundtrack that is getting replaced by a spiritual soundtrack. And because you've just started, so maybe it might feel a little difficult maybe sometimes to go to sleep. But that's...
Yeah, but I find that many times when I'm not able to go to sleep, I start chanting the mantra in my head. And very quickly I can fall asleep. So
no, that's this is actually very good. This is actually what we want, that we are constantly vibrating, with this spiritual sound, because the sound is actually what can take us back. That is our connection. So yeah, I sometimes, I'm just going to go up first and then come to Daryl Ashley. Obsessive, that's healing. Thank you so much. So how can we find sounds to help us? Well, there are, many mantras given in the Vedas. The Bhagavad-Gita is actually a collection of 700 mantras right there. So, you can recite those verses. The easiest and the most recommended in this age is actually this mantra that we are teaching. But there are many other mantras.
And also the lectures of saintly people. There are so many of them that you can access, and listening to the sounds of these saintly people purifies the heart and creates an attraction for Krishna.
So hope that helps. You're also welcome now to, if you want to ask the question directly, you can also do that. Still interested in what Michio Kaku said about God's mind. I have reason to believe that he was talking about Lord Brahma's mind, not Lord Krishna's mind.
Yeah, Brahma's mind is in the time of creation, Brahma basically borrows from Krishna's mind. Krishna gives him the power that he has, and so they are in sync. There is, in that sense, there is no difference between Brahma's mind and Krishna's mind.
Okay, that makes sense. That actually comes from a conversation with a devotee I had very early on. I was asking him about the relation between the name Krishna and the English word God. And he was telling me that in English, when we use the English word God, most people are actually referring to Lord Brahma, not to Krishna. And so I think Aristotle knew about Lord Brahma, but I don't think he knew about Krishna. So I think also Michio Kaku is talking about Brahma here, not Krishna.
That's possible. That's possible.
I like your question a lot. Talking about sounds, is there a reason for Hare Krishna to be our mantra for the meditation challenge? So yes, again, like we said, there are so many mantras given in the Vedas, and those are all effective, and one can, if one has a preference, then for sure one can chant on those mantras. The reason why we chant, now again, mantra chanting is actually a science, and many of those mantras, they require great prerequisites. So there are, like for example, the Gayatri mantra, that's another mantra, it's very powerful, but then there are prerequisites, and if the prerequisites are not there, then one may not be able to get the full benefit of it. So this is the reason why, the great teachers of Bhakti, they could see that this is an age of mass distraction. You're very distracted. And just like the father of my Ayurveda teacher said, that I can't really teach you mantra medicine because you're so distracted, So we have to work with our limitations of this age. And so this Maha Mantra, this Hare Krishna mantra that we chant is actually highly effective. And it does not have any prerequisites. And it's also at the same time very easy. And so it takes us very quickly. It's a special concession for people like us.
So Jamie, I am not aware of the Battle of Jericho, so maybe I can do research on that and then get back to you on that. What's the similarity? And we are posting our videos on YouTube slowly. So yesterday's video is there already. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Zoom into Self, and there you'll find a playlist for Zoom into Gita, which is this particular study we are doing.
Arnik, what do you mean when you say I can see first class only?
Yeah, yesterday's class is also there.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, okay. And what about mute people who are unable to speak? I think they have actually, there are some devotees like that who are actually chanting even though they cannot speak. And I think they've created a special, braille they call them, right, with Hare Krishna, and they're able to actually follow that, and they're able to chant. So there is, actually this is the one thing about this mantra, is that there are no restrictions and there are no obstacles.
You can chant in the mind, those people who are not able to speak.
Yeah, you can chant in the mind. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. You talked about Pashyanti, Madhyama and Bakari. In Bakari, language comes in the level of Bakari only. In Madhyama and Pashyanti, there is no need of language.
Yes, that is true. And I have to do more research on that. I think
Madhyama, there is understanding of the object and the word.
Yeah, the Varna, the concept of Varna or letters appears in Madhyama Vak. So then the concept of language also starts appearing in Madhyama Vak. But it becomes fully manifest in Vaikari Vak.
And I think Rai has a thought. If manifestation is sound, then I imagine thoughts of relieving traumas also generate sound, which then re-manifests negativity and trauma.
Yeah. That is,
Can we go?
Go back to the question.
Yeah. Just wanted to see it so that, is sound, and I imagine thoughts of relief. Yeah, exactly. If we meditate too much on what went wrong in our life, right, and we're continuously thinking and trying to work on it, then of course we need to work on it, but we need something that can actually replace that soundtrack. And that's actually the meaning of the word samskara in Sanskrit. It means mental impressions. So we want to change those mental impressions.
And that's what mantra literally means, mana trayate, which means frees the mind from those traumas and negativity. And that is the effect of mantras, because sometimes we just try to get rid of things from our consciousness through the willpower and positive affirmations, but it can only go so far, because there's a lot of things that are there that had to be cleaned out, and positive affirmations and determination and willpower is not going to help after a certain point, because that thing is still within us, so that needs to be flushed out from our system. And this is what mantra does. This is the effect of mantras is cleansing effect.
Amrita, I really like your point about, since thoughts and emotions are also a form of sound, we can control our thoughts and emotions with the chanting of the Maha Mantra sound and reverse the negative thoughts. Absolutely, right on. That's exactly what happens. Deirdre, you're saying ruminating. Did you want to share more? What's in your... Need the sound vibration to vibrate the negative onward and out. Yes. Yes, and that's what it does. Just like we use the ghee example. That's exactly what it does. As soon as you introduce the sound vibration, one will find that there will be a shift, a movement in your consciousness. And all those old habits, old patterns of thinking, they will start getting replaced by newer patterns which are positive and which are spiritually grounded, you know. So one can see it for oneself. The power of this, mantra chanting. It's something that one can see.
So thank you all. I think we've gone 10 minutes over.